With Miller Mott College's online programs, you can choose when you study. Our online programs give you the flexibility to make education work with your schedule. Earn your degree without derailing your life. Visit us online at miller-mott.edu. That's miller-mott.edu.
Could not be any land further than this, to the south. So this must, in fact, be the Terra Australis. So we can just kind of end our search here. Antarctica will be, discovered about 30 years later. So we find out this guy was wrong.
My name is Richard Dix, and this is How Did That Happen? A podcast where I look at everyday things or events and try to figure out how they came to be. Every week I will research one topic, and by the end of the episode, I hope to truly have the answer to the question, how did that happen?
Hello, and welcome to another episode of How Did That Happen? This week we are discussing Australia. Is it a continent? Is it a country? Is it both? I plan to get to the bottom of that. But before we get to that part of the show, I want to tell you guys about the website that is up and going at hdthappen.com, where you can find all the extras that are part of HDTH. There's some transcripts up there from all of the episodes will be up there eventually. I have about 14 of them up right now, of the 47 that we have. So it's taking some time, but definitely go over there and leave a comment if you want. And there's also a bit of the blog, and the bite-sized bios are also transcribed the same way as well. Let's see, what am I watching? I tell you, I just watched that movie, The Good Nurse, and oh man, that was a good one. It starts really slow, and I almost didn't keep watching, but I did. And it's a crazy story, and I'm really hoping that there's a real documentary out there that I can follow up with, because I kind of have to know more. But yeah, it was I think it's Eddie Redmayne and Jessica Chastain, I believe, are the main actors in that. But yeah, definitely check that out if you get a chance. I don't think there's anything else I want to bore you guys with before we get to the topic. Like and subscribe wherever you can. Always appreciate it. Yeah, let's get to the show. All right, so let's dive right in. The name Australia is derived from the Latin Terra Australis, which means southern land. And so this was a name that was used for a hypothetical continent in the southern hemisphere during the ancient times. And so this is kind of a wild idea. The idea is that if there is land in the northern hemisphere, then there has to be land in the southern hemisphere to balance out the globe. I love that idea because it's so simple. Like, it's just like the smartest people alive at that time were just like, well, if there's land up here, there's got to be land down there. And that's just that, even though we haven't seen it. And this whole idea goes back as far as the 5th century. There were also plenty of other names for this mythical continent before it was found. Like I said, we have Terra Australis. Then there was Terra Australis Ignota Incognite, which stands for the unknown land of the south. Then there's a Terra Australis Nondum Cognita, which stands for the southern land not yet unknown. All this stuff sounds really mysterious. Let's see what we have here. And then there's like Magellanica, which is the land of Magellan, and a bunch of other different type of names that you would see pop up on maps during that time for this mythical part of the world that had yet to be discovered. Let's see, Matthias Ringman called it the Aura Antarctica, Antarctic land, in 1505, and that was because basically Antarctica was also grouped into this whole idea of this mythical southern continent. And sometimes when some of the explorers, when they first found Australia, thought they were actually finding Antarctica. And so for the record, Australia is both a country and a continent. It's the only one of its kind. And one of the articles that I read best described it by saying that, quote, Australia is a country that is part of a continent that's also called Australia, all of which are part of a region known as Oceania, which Oceania really is just a created idea to classify all the island nations in that area, and they include Australia in that. It's a little weird, but when I was growing up, I was taught that Australia was a continent. Now I'm hearing all this Oceania stuff. And I've always thought it was pretty cool that that Australia kind of was that only continent, I guess besides Antarctica. But Antarctica, no one really lives there, so it's not really the same thing. But yeah, Australia is both a continent and a country. It's pretty interesting. And it is considered to be the oldest, flattest, and driest inhabited continent with the least fertile soil. And it is what's known as a mega diverse country. And let's see, it has deserts, rainforests and mountain ranges, which is pretty interesting when you think about it. It's kind of how America is as well, I guess, minus the rainforest. But when you look over the landscape of America, you can find a lot of different climates, and I think that's interesting. I didn't know there was a rainforest in Australia. I'll be honest, I don't. Yeah, I thought it was all just deserts, and I guess I knew there were mountains there. I don't know. And so now we're going to talk about the Aborigines, which I'll be completely honest and say that I think about 5 years ago, maybe 10. I'll give myself some credit. I found out that they even existed. I did not know. I didn't know that there were like native people there before the Europeans came. I really didn't. I don't know if I was listening in history class or not. But yeah, so I found that out. So that was news to me. I'm gonna learn some more things about them here. So the indigenous people in Australia are broken down into two different groups. You have the Aboriginal people are from the mainland and Tasmania, and then there are some from the Torres Strait people who are Melanesian, right? And for a long time in my life, once again, because I don't know much about Australia, I didn't know that Tasmania actually existed. I thought it was something that was made up by Looney Tunes. Imagine my surprise when I found out what a Tasmanian devil actually looks like. Nothing like the cartoon, if you're wondering. People have been living on Australia's mainland for at least 65,000 years. That's why I said it's one of the oldest inhabited continents in the whole world. And those people, they came over from land bridges and short sea crossings from Southeast Asia. And this was thousands of years before humans even made it up from Africa to Europe. And the land bridge thing is a wild, idea to me. They say that happened a lot, even for the people who came over into America a little bit. But I wish, we could find one of those. Just wish we could lay eyes on one of those right now, because it's still such a hard concept to quantify. But they really say those things existed. So, like I said, the Aborigines in Australia are one of the oldest continuous cultures on Earth. And when the Europeans first made contact around the 1500s, they were complex hunter-gatherers and had diverse economies and had over 250 different language groups, which I think is pretty remarkable when you think about it. Like that's a lot of language. There are a lot of different types of communication. So there's a difference, or excuse me, there's evidence that about 3,000 years ago there was contact between the Indians and the Aborigines. We're talking like the South Asian Indians, and because they share, this was found because they share about 11% of the same DNA, which is pretty wild if you think about it. I mean, who would have really ever guessed that? So they are part Indian, and I'm sure there's a story there. The indigenous people believe in something that they call dream time, and this is going to be a really hard something to kind of understand and explain, but it's actually pretty interesting. It's pretty much how they try to understand how the world was created and how the afterlife works and different stuff like that. So for them, it's called dream time or dreaming. And it represents the time when the ancestral spirits progressed over the land and created life and important physical geographic formations. And it can also be called the every when. It has a bunch of different names for it. And so they see past and present and future as like a cyclical thing. And they also believe that some of them believe that the world started as flat and then was carved out by what they call a rainbow snake. A rainbow snake. And so this idea, that one specifically, is shared by the northern part of the Australian Aborigines, and the other country, or the other part of the country, believes that the original ancestors were called a Wangina. I feel like there's somebody out there with that name for sure. And Wangina is the most significant creation spirit, and it's associated with the rain and therefore the seasonal regeneration of the land and all natural resources. And the body of the Wangina is often shown covered with dots that represent the rainfall. And I've actually seen some pictures, and I probably will post it on the website or the Twitter page that actually shows where they dress up and dot themselves off in that same kind of garb. And I do believe those are sirens in the distance that I was just hearing there. So when the Europeans actually came and showed up in Australia, they considered the Aborigine people to be in their Stone Age, which is, a Stone Age is defined as a period which stone is widely used to make tools with an edge or a point and things like that. And so they hadn't really progressed until, I guess, like the metalworking level, or I'm not really sure what comes next. But I guess the Europeans were a little bit more advanced. And so that actually bring us to European contact. In the 1500s, European colonization was really getting underway, across all the countries there, and all the big guys were out there trying to conquer the southeastern Asian islands and take what they could. And it was during this time that the Dutch became the first Europeans to get to Australia. Now, remember, Australia used to be a myth, so it was a pretty big deal when they stumbled upon this large landmass that people had kind of been looking for about 1,000 years. And the guy that was in charge of this This first voyage was a man by the name of William Jansoon, and he is considered to be the first European to make contact with Australia. And he did so on the 26th of February, 1606, when they came through the Pennefather River on the western shore of Cape York in Queensland, which is, I guess, now a town named Waipa or something like that. And when he did this, 10 of his men died pretty quickly from the, I guess they had a disagreement with the locals, right after they got off the boat. And this prompted him to turn around and go back to Indonesia, where the ship had originally come from. But he was the first guy to be like, I found it. They're not so nice. Maybe go back with more people. Maybe a gun or two. But and he initially wanted to call Australia New Zealand, but that didn't catch on. And this is actually because, up until the early 19th century, Australia was actually known as New Holland. And it was given that name by a man named Abel Tasman in 1644. And he first actually got to Tasmania before he got to Australia, but still thought he was in Australia. And it wouldn't come to actually be known as Australia until British cartographer Matthew Flinders, he kind of came up with that idea because he said it was easier, to say than I guess all the other names they had for it. And this was during the early 1800s. And he also reasoned that there could not be any land further than this, to the south. So this must in fact be the Terra Australis. So we can just kind of end our search here. No other southern land was known at the time. Of course, Antarctica will be, discovered about 30 years later. So we find out this guy was wrong. There are a lot of things in Australia named after him, a lot of islands and cities and schools and stuff like that. They even have statues of this guy. So he's a pretty big deal when it comes to, I guess the Australia as a whole. Definitely, by giving it his namesake, even if he did, think he was wrong. Christopher Columbus thought he was in India. So, but now we can get to the British and their whole part in this, because of course, the Dutch come through and then they kind of make the first contact. But after the end of the French and Indian War, the British felt the need to expand their colony in a bid for more control and power of the world. And this would send British explorers to, go and see what they could do with Australia as well. And the guy that they sent was a man by the name of James Cook. And he was one of the most well-known and most successful British explorers out there pretty much in history. He made 3 distinct voyages and he circumnavigated the world at least twice. He eventually found and claimed the eastern half of Australia, and he called it New South Wales. And fun fact about Mr. James Cook here, he was the inspiration for Captain Kirk of Star Trek, and he actually died a really gruesome death in Hawaii, and I'll tell you about it right now. Captain Cook was killed in Kealakekua Bay on Valentine's Day, 1779. In a confrontation with the indigenous people of Hawaii. He was actually trying to kidnap the king of Hawaii. So some of these stories, they want to make it seem like, I don't know, like the people were acting crazy. Like he was trying to, basically the ship had left first off. Like they were already gone. But then something happened and kind of had to come back in for repair. So he was actually gone, and he came back. They stole some wood from a burial ground, and that really made people mad. And I guess and they kept going back and forth. And James Cook thought his next move was to try to kidnap the king. They didn't like that, so when he was taking them, the king out, to the shore to try to get him back on his little ship on the little ship to take him back to the big ship. The people surrounded him and beat him in the head with like a rock or something, and then stabbed him and killed him, and then carried his body off, into the town. They said the people on the ship are watching this through like a telescope or something. I'm like, that's a wild, man. But so that's how his life, ends. But he's actually really instrumental in like kind of the British kind of putting their first little grippers or and starting to try to colonize Australia for its own. And there's actually a pretty interesting like backstory behind, I guess, how it got colonized. I'm not going to go into it like completely. I'm going to keep talking more about the actual colonization, but as far as like how the British got to Australia before the French, there's this whole like kind of battle between them both to kind of take Australia, because it was this whole kind of, I guess, like this geopolitical thing, like how they had been fighting each other for years, and so they both saw taking Australia as a way to kind of take them up another level. And Britain ends up being the one who is successful in that respect, and that brings us to the whole idea, which of them depositing prisoners onto the island, and that being like kind of the beginning of Australia. I think that's something that's always interested me about the idea of Australia, and may have been, I guess, the whole the impetus behind why I wanted to research this, is because I think it's pretty cool, and I actually do end up learning some things, and I'm about to share them with you right now. So one interesting thing that I learned that I didn't know before, I'm not, but this isn't that segment, is that before America declared its independence, Britain would send its criminals and prisoners to America. I really did not know that. You know, a lot of them came as indentured servants who had skills and would work off their punishments. Now, like I knew the idea of indentured servants existed, but I didn't really know that it was just something that continued like pretty much on all of all the way up until America was like we're going to be America. And so they took Britain took that same system and just instituted it in Australia. I guess my point is that it's not new. I thought it was not that I thought it was new or I guess different, but I just didn't know that they were also doing that in America as well. And so in 1788, Britain kind of officially colonized Australia, and that's when they sent those 11 ships over there. And that's kind of what I was talking about before, where basically it was them trying to get to, I guess over there, Botany Bay, and before the French could, because they wanted to kind of take it and just kind of tell the French to shove it. And these guys are actually known as the First Fleet, and they were captained by a man named Arthur Phillips, and they ended up going to Sydney Cove. And so the majority of the people on that ship were convicts, and most of them were male. And so the goal was to establish a colony, discipline the prisoners, and find a way to work with the indigenous population, which like most indigenous populations and colony clashes, it went about the same way. A lot of disease, a lot of fighting back and forth and killing. So it's sad, but it's kind of just the way of the world, unfortunately. And so their colonization wasn't easy, and this was also this was just due to trying it's Australia. The terrain was really hard for them to master, and it was a slow process for them to actually try to colonize. And so by the 1790s, free settlers began to come to Australia as well. And then you jump about 20 years later, and there's about 10,000 Europeans that are living in Australia, all under kind of British rule. I mean, there are other nations that are coming in and out of there, but Britain is definitely one that's holding it all down, pretty much from that point forward. And it's that's why they are still a Commonwealth nation under a Commonwealth realm. And I looked into the whole government of how it works because I'm really interested in it, but it's a lot. But basically, King Charles is like the king of Australia. I guess at me if I'm wrong. I probably am, but I think that's what I was seeing. I'm gonna hit you guys with some fast facts about Australia, and then we're gonna head to the roundup. All right. So the official name of Australia is the Commonwealth of Australia. The form of government is the federal parliamentary democracy. Like I said, also part of the Commonwealth realms. The official capital of Australia is a city called Canberra, which it's kind of a cool name. Kind of reminds me of cranberries. The population of Australia is about 23 million. Official language is England. About 90% of the population lives right on the coast because Australia is just pretty crazy when you go inland. Let's see, they have super huge mountain ranges. They say they get more snow than the Swiss Alps. I didn't even know that. Like I said, I didn't know Australia had Alps. I guess I'm that uncultured. Let's see. They say Tasmania has the cleanest air in the world. Kangaroos only exist in Australia, which is something that I've never thought about, but is pretty interesting when you think about it. I guess you don't see them anywhere else. I've seen them in zoos, but you never think about I guess they're just in Australia. And that is how Australia happened. And now it's time for the roundup. And we're going to round it up. Australia is one of the largest continuously populated continents in the world. People have been living there for 65,000 years. Europeans first made contact in the early 1600s. By the 1800s, Britain would colonize the whole country.
Things I didn't know before. And now I know them. Never heard of these things. What are they?
All right, so the first thing that I did not know before, and some of you may already know this, but that I did not know that birds and crocodiles are related. I did not know that. I guess it makes sense because dinosaurs and birds, must be related because birds are dinosaurs, right, or something like that. But yeah, they're actually come from the same species family, so they're like legitimately related. I had no idea. When you look at them, you would never think about that they're in the same family with other dinosaurs and stuff that are extinct. but they are the two that made it, interestingly enough. And then I've pretty much only got one more, I think, or maybe two, depending on how you look at it. I looked into all that Commonwealth stuff, and I still I don't really understand it. So that's something that I guess I still don't really know before or after, but I kind of understand it. It seems like a lot. Let's see. The last one that I'll say before I get out of here is that Australia is the only continent, they say, without an active volcano on it, which is pretty interesting when you think of it. I never really thought about that, but you do see volcanoes on most continents, but they say it doesn't have one. All right, that's been another episode of How Did That Happen? HDTH. As always, thanks for pressing play. I appreciate all the new ears we get, as well as the ears that come back from week to week. As always, stop by the website, hdthappen.com, or hit us on the Twitter page at hdthappen. Let us know what you think. Even if it's bad, I'm down for it. I'll read what you got. I'll take anything. Just trying to get some engagement and trying to grow this podcast. But yeah, I think that's pretty much it. See you guys in a couple days with the bite-sized bios.
Okay, round two. Name something that's not boring.
A laundry? Ooh, a book club. Computer solitaire, huh?
Ah, sorry, we were looking for Chumba Casino. That's right, ChumbaCasino.com has over 100 casino-style games. Join today and play for free for your chance to redeem some serious prizes. ChumbaCasino.com. No purchase necessary. Void where prohibited by law. 18+ terms and conditions apply. See website for details.
Judy was boring.
Hello.
Then Judy discovered ChumbaCasino.com.
It's my little escape.
Now Judy's the life of the party.
Oh, baby, mama's bringing home the bacon.
Whoa, take it easy, Judy. The Chumba life is for everybody. So go to ChumbaCasino.com and play over 100 casino-style games. Join today and play for free for your chance to redeem some serious prizes. ChumbaCasino.com.
No purchase necessary. Void where prohibited by law. 18+ terms and conditions apply. See website for details.